Has your favorite fitness influencer, or maybe even your doctor, told you that in order to stay lean, to recover properly, and to actually feel athletic, you need to eat upwards of 100 grams of protein a day? And you're kind of sitting there like, wait, 100 grams of chicken or 100 grams of protein? And they say 100 grams of protein, which looks more like this spread across the whole day. And maybe that sounds kind of intimidating or looks kind of intimidating, especially if some days you've kind of realized that you basically lived off like a muesli bar, 2 cold coffees and your child's leftover banana. And that was pretty much me until recently. And it left me feeling weak and tired, and actually prevented me from losing the weight that I gained in Ayana's first year. So basically I lost the baby weight and then I regained a whole bunch of fat while breastfeeding. And there is a reason for that and why this happens. And it's a reason that almost no one likes to talk about. And I'm gonna break it down later in this video, so stay with me. But first, hi, I'm Shona Virtue. I've been a PT and a yoga teacher for nearly 2 decades. I know, that's kind of crazy. I'm an ex-elite gymnast, I'm a psychology graduate, and I'm a mum. I'm also a founder of the Virtue Method, where I blend gymnastics, strength training, Eastern philosophy, and a lot of behavioral science into a system that helps you to build a body that you can keep, not just a body that you chase. And I know that that was a lot of credentials for someone who just admitted to living off toddler snacks. So we should probably dive in. Here's the roadmap for this video. So first, we're going to talk about why you actually need more protein than you think. We're going to break down the science of it. We're also going to break down how to calculate your own needs based on research and not gym bro math. Finally, I'm going to talk about how I hit my protein targets as a working, studying, traveling toddler mom without losing my mind. Okay, so protein isn't just a muscle food thing. It's a survive and thrive thing, especially for women who train, who run households, who work, study, and just generally kind of carry civilization on their backs and still try to party. Firstly, protein rebuilds muscle tissue. Okay, so every workout creates these micro tears in your muscles, and repairing those tears requires amino acids. These are the building blocks of protein. Now, very high quality research shows that active people need 1.6 to 2.2 of protein per kilo of body weight to maximize recovery and to retain that lean mass or build lean mass. And this actually comes from a meta-analysis by Morton et al. From 2018, and then there's more updated evidence reviewed through 2023. Anyway, the point is, protein keeps your metabolism from dipping. So during calorie deficits or like really long chaotic days, adequate protein is going to spare that muscle tissue. So the more muscle we have, the higher our resting metabolic rate. And if we lose that precious muscle, everything feels harder, right? Our training, our sleep, our fat loss, even our mood. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Now, protein also doesn't just support muscle repair. It directly shapes your appetite regulation. And when you eat protein, cells in the gut, they release certain hormones that travel through the bloodstream, and they signal to your brain, primarily the hypothalamus and the brainstem, that nutrient needs are being met. So the result ends up being slower gastric emptying, more stable post-meal blood glucose, and then that stronger sense of fullness that lasts longer than what you get from eating a bunch of fats or carbohydrates alone. And because of this, people who eat, or let's say people who consistently meet their protein requirements, they often find that their overall energy intake, it just kind of naturally decreases. And so there's less grazing, there's fewer of these energy swings, and there's much less reliance on like willpower to avoid your snacking. And in this particular case, it's a little bit of both, but we've got physiology sort of shaping our behavior, as well as our behavior or our decision making to choose to eat higher protein, also impacting our physiology. And that's why the Virtue Method, we don't separate mental and physical. We acknowledge that there is a bidirectional relationship there and they are impacting each other all the time. Now, I do have to kind of iron out a few scientific wrinkles here, just a couple of little asterisks, right? Protein satiety effect varies a little bit with context. So higher protein meals, they consistently increase GLP-1, CCK, and PYY. These are hormones that do impact your appetite. But the size of this effect, it really depends on the meal's composition, as well as like, you know, what you eat all the time, like your habitual diet, and sometimes even your microbiome. So it's not necessarily going to be identical for everyone, but we can still take a general perspective that higher protein is going to keep you satisfied for longer, generally speaking. Now, the other thing that we have to kind of cover is that highly processed protein foods do tend to behave differently. So a whey shake is going to stimulate these hormones much less than like kind of mixed whole food meal with like fiber and a whole bunch of chewing. So if you were chewing like, you know, a chicken breast in a salad, it's going to have a better effect on those hormones I mentioned for your appetite. So liquid calories, they move through the stomach faster, they reduce that satiety signal. Chewing is a big thing that helps our brain become aware of how much we've actually eaten. So that's why it's also important to chew your food. Obviously chewing has a whole bunch of other benefits too, but just so you know that one. Now, chronic dieting can also blunt our satiety signals. So if we have really long stretches of low energy availability, so if you're dieting loads, it can start to downregulate these hormones, right? Because your body's really smart. It has these like very important ways to make sure that it doesn't lose precious fat, muscle, all the things. And so it starts to increase your ghrelin. That's the hunger hormone. And so while protein helps, it's not going to fully override the body's push to defend its energy stores while you're in a deficit. If you've been dieting for a really, really long time, or if you find yourself kind of going like this with your calories, that's why sometimes you can be like absolutely ravenous, even if you're eating a high protein diet. Now, perimenopause, it's important to know, can also alter gut-brain signaling. And so estrogen interacts with that GLP-1 and CCK pathway that I was talking about earlier. And when estrogen starts to fluctuate, appetite regulation can become a little bit more erratic. Lots of fun stuff for us in our perimenopause stage. So this means that, again, like protein is helpful, but it's not gonna be this magic lever that just fixes everything. But it's still really important. Now that we've kind of ironed out those rough spots, I just want to talk about the final two benefits of protein that I just don't really see talked about a lot. The first one is recovery of tendons, of fascia, pelvic floor, connective tissue. So the collagen formation and soft tissue healing, it requires those amino acids that I was talking about, but specific ones like glycine, proline, and lysine, plus a little bit of vitamin C. For postpartum women, for anyone lifting regularly, and then on top of that, for anyone who like kind of cares about beauty, right? Great skin, hair, and nails, you're gonna need your protein. And so if you're in that protein deficit, your body's not going to recover properly. And then finally, protein also supports cognition, mood, and nervous system regulation, because these amino acids, they also create the neurotransmitters dopamine and serotonin. So if you start to feel a little bit irritable or foggy or emotional while under eating protein, it's because you're under fueling your brain. So I think I've made the case here for why we need protein. So let's just move on to, how much you personally need. I have found with my clients that most people undereat protein by accident. And it's often because you're thinking in food weight and not in nutrient weight. So remember, we have to eat for the nutrient, not for the food. It's a really easy mistake to make, but sometimes we think we've eaten a whole bunch of protein across the day, but actually when you break it down, there's not that much protein in the actual individual foods that you're eating. So a really clear formula to use is 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. And this is for anyone who trains strength and or like multiple endurance days a week. Like I said, if you're recovering from postpartum, if you're training, if you care about beauty, but also if you're eating in a deficit, you want to make sure you're sitting on those higher ends of that scale. So a quick example might be like a 60 kilo person is going to eat somewhere between 96 to 132 grams of protein per day. 70 kilos, you're roughly up at around 112 to 154 grams. If you're sitting around the 80 kilo, you're going to be around 128 to 176 grams per day. Something that is important to remember is that if we are dieting, if we are trying to do a recomposition of our body, so let's say we want to drop some body fat and increase our muscle mass, we want to lean out a little bit, what we need to be thinking of is feeding our lean body mass, not our total weight, or some people call it your fat-free mass. Okay, so the most accurate way to get this information is through a DEXA scan, and this is going to give you your full body composition. I highly recommend doing that if recomposition is something that you care about. I did one, I'm about to go and do another one. You also get your bone mineral density, really important. You get your muscle mass, so you can see certain imbalances around the body. You can see where maybe you need to bring muscle up a little bit, or maybe between the left and right sides, if you have more muscle on one side, less on the other. All these interesting details that are really important to understand about your body. So in that DEXA scan, you actually also get your fat-free mass or your lean body mass. And so we do our protein calculation based on that lean body mass. So we're feeding that, we're ideally dropping our body fat, if that is our goal. So if you're in postpartum, in a deficit, if you're training hard, like I said, I would love you to stick closer to that 2 to 2.2 end. If you're maintaining, or maybe you're training moderately, like your 1.6 to 1.8, it's still gonna be better. And if you're finding that you're a little bit overwhelmed at the whole protein consumption thing, start on that lower end and build up. Now, this isn't my opinion. This comes from systematic reviews. This comes from ISSN guidelines. It also comes from a recent meta-analysis that compared low versus high protein intake for muscle retention and performance. Now, something that is really important to mention as well is that resistance training, weight training, is like trumps all of this. Yeah, you're not just gonna eat protein and gain muscle. You have to create the stimulus that's going to yield that adaptation, and that adaptation being putting on muscle. Even in a low protein context, you can still gain muscle by resistance training. Do I think you should do that? Absolutely not. Like, why would you hinder your body if you didn't have to? So now that you know how much protein you actually need, this is the trickier part, is actually getting that all in. Okay, so here's how I make 100 grams of protein doable across the day. Firstly, I always try to keep pre-cooked protein in the fridge. This makes it just brainless. I'll cook chicken, tofu, turkey mince, beef mince, whatever, ahead of time. And that way, at lunch, I'm not scrambling to find something satiating. I'm just assembling a sandwich or assembling a salad or a bowl with the carbs that I already love. And then just the really important part, which is adequate amounts of protein. It's so much easier. And that's my next point, is it's really important to know your cooked protein. And I'm kind of frantically doing this with my hand, because it's important to know the amounts of protein with a visual aid, like the palm of your hand, like your fist, like your thumb maybe. And this allows you to make sure that you're eating enough when you're out or when you're not able to weigh it, right? My hand is always with me, my kitchen scales are not, and that is for good reason, because we don't need to be carrying our kitchen scales around like that. Borderline insane. Unless of course you're an athlete or you're bodybuilding for a reason, for a comp or something like that. There are obviously far end reasons, but the most of us, we should not be living our life like that. Another thing that makes that 100 grams or 110 or 150 across your day a lot easier is to have a really good repertoire of recipes that you just kind of rotate throughout your week. It's not so much about, preventing decision fatigue, which isn't that substantiated in the evidence-based psychology world, pop psychology maybe, but it basically just makes life a little bit easier, right? You don't have to think about what you want to eat, like all the emotion that comes rushing in when you're trying to figure out whether you do or do not want this meal or whatever. If you just have a rotation, you just kind of go, cool, that's what we're on tonight, and it's done. So this right here is 100 grams of protein. I don't know about you, but to me that doesn't look that intimidating to eat. Now, of course, it doesn't include all the fiber and carbohydrates that I would normally include in my meals. There's some obviously in there with the greens and the fruit and the crustkits, but this isn't necessarily what my day would look like on a plate. But this is definitely what my protein intake would look like. So this is around 200 grams of egg whites as an omelet, and I will often chuck on like some extra cheese here, spinach. You can put whatever you want in this. I'm not afraid of the egg yolk, but if I was to have an omelet and then also have some boiled eggs later, it might throw off my fat intake. I usually keep my fat, at least at the moment, to around 50 grams that I measure, knowing that often I'll tend to go over that a little bit as well. Like in the oils you're cooking, in, a quick snack you grab here or there. So fats I am more careful with when I am cooking and prepping for myself, because I know that I will always slightly go over. I have 200 grams of Greek yogurt here. This is 120 grams of chicken mince. Like, it looks like nothing. 2 eggs, and this is a can of tuna on top of some Cruskets with some Philadelphia cheese. This right here is 100 grams of protein. This really does look doable, but what's crazy is that a lot of women especially are not hitting this target. And what's also happening is that you're probably eating more carbohydrates, more fats, and not meeting the protein that your body actually needs. Something that is particularly interesting here, and I don't know if you've already noticed it, but there's not a single protein shake in sight. Now, if I wanted to bump up my protein, which I am eating around 120 grams a day at the moment, that extra protein shake bumps up this perfectly. Without throwing off my calories, without making it really hard to get another meal in, it's just a quick protein shake. I've already shown you what 100 to 120 grams of protein looks like across your day. So if you kind of know what that looks like for you, and you just make sure that you're meeting that, life gets a whole lot easier. Another point that I really want to raise is around the high protein label. So please don't get tricked, because brands, they know that you're trying to increase protein, and they also know that you're tired and are information overloaded by nutritional kind of like propaganda. And so high protein on the front, or 11 grams of protein, doesn't really mean that much, because it could be 11 grams of protein and 16 grams of fat, like peanut butter. An amazing food, I love that. Great that it has protein, but it is mostly a fat source. And yet a lot of the time it's marketed as a protein source. Same goes for sugar. Sometimes protein bars are really just desserts in disguise. And the issue is that if sugar is something that you are monitoring or are trying to just be a little bit more mindful of, then it's worthwhile flipping the packet and just having a quick look. What is the ratio of protein to sugar or protein to fat? Is it really substantial here in the context of all the food I'm eating and this bar or this little snack? And I guess the big roundup point that I want to make around this whole concept of tracking is that this isn't something that you should be relying on forever. It's just about kind of getting a gauge for what your body needs and what your goals are in alignment with at the moment. And I think sometimes we have this fear around tracking, if perhaps in the past it's become a little bit obsessive or it's made us a little bit emotional, but tracking can actually make sure that you get enough food. In my experience as a trainer, what I'm commonly finding is that, especially my women, you'll be eating like a surplus of calories, so not able to drop that body fat, but you're under eating your protein. And those two things in combination hinder each other, because without enough protein, we're obviously not going to be able to build the muscle that we want, which is going to help with our metabolism, help with our shape, help with our strength, all the things. But then if we're not eating enough protein, we're also rarely going to feel satiated. And that often means that we end up eating more calories than we sort of, quote unquote, I use the word should lightly because it's not really about shoulds, but let's just say in accordance with the goals that we're aiming for or the physiology of our body, right? What our caloric intake needs actually are. And so if you're overeating in your calories and undereating in your protein, you are setting yourself up for a frustrating journey of recompositioning your body, if that is your goal. So I don't want you to be tracking forever, but I do want you to track to get an understanding of what your body needs, knowing that this is just data. This is not a forever thing. Remember, if we're running out of money, what do we need to do? We need to track our spending. We need to track how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. I don't always love using that analogy because the human experience can't be likened to something that binary. The same way that the human experience can't be likened to just the physiological experience of calories in versus calories out. We're eating for so many different reasons, and even our gut microbiome can impact certain aspects of how we draw nutrients out of our food. Our activity levels, like so many things are impacting that whole metric, but the metric itself, like the calculation itself, is like the law of thermodynamics. You can't really like overrule that. So the formula sounds simple, calories in versus calories out, but it's the experience of it and the human experience in the context of that formula that makes calories in versus calories out not that simple, or at least dropping body fat or changing our body composition a little bit more complicated. It's because we love our food for different reasons. But anyway, I digress. This video is about protein and how to get enough of it. I just know that sometimes when we start talking about tracking, that it can get a little bit triggering, and I don't want it to be that for you. If you want me to unpack calories and all of those things a little bit more, then just let me know in the comments and we can kind of like unpack that. I have done some podcast episodes on fat loss from a more biopsychosocial lens. So we're incorporating biology, but also psychology and our social environment as well. So make sure you check those out. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about protein. So, So a little earlier, I promised that I'd come back to the whole kind of like gaining weight while breastfeeding thing. The thing that I feel like nobody warns you about and almost nobody wants to admit out loud. And I totally respect that. So let's talk about it properly. Let's unpack this. There is this strange silence around the women who lose the baby weight and then like kind of regain it again in the year that follows. And it's not because they're overeating or because they're lazy or letting themselves go, but it's because the first year of motherhood is a biological and logistical, I want to say shit show, but I don't want to put a negative perspective. So I'm going to say circus. And it happened to me, right? I dropped the baby weight and then I gained the fat back while breastfeeding. It's funny because we have this misconception that like the breastfeeding is going to make you drop the body fat. And that might happen like kind of initially in the first 3 months. But then you get this like hurricane, the sleep regression of your baby at around like 4 months and then no predictability whatsoever. And so it becomes really difficult to actually have a routine. My mum passed away just before my baby turned 1, and she was not only a logistical help in terms of how much she contributed to like me being able to go for my runs, train, meal prep, all that stuff, but also I had the grief, and grief wreaks havoc on a whole bunch of different things. When I started to gain that weight, I had that familiar shame creep in, and I had to pull myself up and really, really remember something important. Motherhood is not this controlled laboratory experiment, right? Like I said, it's the sleep regressions. Oh my God, I didn't mention the daycare bugs. It's the teething chaos. And so when life gets that wild, all of our preparation, our meal prep, our training, it completely collapses. And your nervous system is so fried, it's trying to keep you alive. And so that does not make you weak. That does not make you lazy. It really makes you human. And so if you're in that season right now, please drop the shame. You actually don't need it. It's not going to serve you. It's going to hinder you. And it's definitely an extra cognitive weight that you were never meant to carry. It's beauty standards that impact us, that make us feel like we should be different, when in reality, so many of us are actually trying to raise babies without villages, let alone the need of this ridiculous beauty pressure. Once the basics fall into place, once you start to get a little bit more rhythm and consistency, you can then start to implement more of the external patterns and rhythms. Eating enough protein becomes a rhythm. And honestly, your body will change fast. Your energy will come back. Your training, when you get to it, it stops feeling like such an uphill battle. And you will start to feel like yourself again. Not the pre-baby version, but actually a stronger, steadier, wiser, motherhood forged version. And so if you're starting to feel ready for that steadiness and you want the guesswork taken out of your training, mama, I got you. Okay, whether you're lifting in the gym, whether you're squeezing the workouts at home between like naps, deadlines, whether you're rebuilding like strength and flexibility after birth, there's a program on my website designed for your season of life. Even if you don't have babies and you are still here as a part of the community, awesome. I'm sorry that I spend so much time talking about baby stuff. It's just because obviously it's very much my world, but to be honest, we should be listening to more mums. Get rid of the productivity guys talking away with their assistants and their 12-hour, excuse my swearing, and their 12-hour like free time days. Like, where are the mums? Bring them in onto the podcasts and get their productivity hacks. That's where we need to be thinking about these things. Anyway, yes, I mentioned child stuff. Yes, I mentioned being a mum. Even if you don't have a baby, even if that's not where your life is right now or where you even want it to be, I highly recommend still trying to take note of these things, because I wish I had understood the pressure of what motherhood has done to me and been able to apply those lessons to an earlier life. Like, I genuinely think I would be in a very different place if I'd been able to take those productivity lessons, but such is the nature of life. Anyway, so I'm giving them to you. But if you do want a program, head to my website. I can help you with the structure and the progression that is systematic, that will get you the results. Now, if you do want private coaching from me, the mindset, the support, the structure, the accountability, the whole psychological side of it, then you can definitely apply for private training on my website as well. Either way, you do not have to figure this out alone. You're actually probably already carrying enough already. So let me carry the programming for you. I think that's enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps to support the channel. And please let me know where you're watching from. If you have any questions about protein, about mixing protein with training, about training in general, then let me know. If you guys have been a part of this channel for a while, thank you so much for being here, for sticking around. I know that the channel and what I share has changed a lot, but I have changed a lot. And I'm really trying to make sure that I bring the things that I've learned, not just through motherhood, but through my psychology degree, my ongoing psychology study to become a sports psychologist, and just my progression as a strength and conditioning coach. I want all of that to sit in this channel, and I really want to be an open book for you guys. So if there's anything, any topics that you want me to cover, please let me know. I read all the comments, I go through it. If you want more follow along workouts, I will still do them on this channel, but make sure you check out the Daily 10 channel for follow along workouts as well there. It's an awesome channel. 10-minute workouts, but you can bundle them together. I've created playlist training programs as well so that you can kind of follow it. It's really awesome if you're in that season of busyness and really struggling to find structure. That channel right there is going to help you to do it. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you guys soon. Bye. Mwah.